So I'm going to start this pod off with a little bit of other sports news because I was impressed by this. So we had the fights at Madison Square Garden. We're recording this on Sunday. They happened last night, and they ended around midnight. And then the Knicks played at Madison Square Garden at noon. So in 12 hours, they managed to get rid of the octagon and set up the basketball court for an NBA regular season game. So I thought that was pretty impressive. Shout out to the staff at Madison Square Garden. Never thought I'd say that.
That is
MMA show.
Interesting, you know. I mean, obviously, the schedules and stuff are out beforehand, but I would assume, or I could be wrong, but obviously the NBA gets their schedule whenever. But I guess I guess the UFC maybe they saw it, and I don't know how it works, how they get the location for where they're gonna hold the cards and stuff, but
that's probably interesting how they figure that out. I'd love to be a fly on the wall in those board meetings where they figure that out.
I mean, this was obviously a great one to have at MSG. So
yeah, and I'd say let's just hop right into this one. So the main event was the highly anticipated title fight between Alex Pereira and Yuri Prochazka, and before we get into that a little bit, it's crazy that this was the new main event because Jones versus Stipe got canceled. And I think true MMA fans, when they saw that this was going to be the new main event, I think everybody was happy. And I think it lived up to the hype, too. I mean, Alex KOs Yuri Prochazka in round 2.
Man. That is really wild. It's this card was just simply, it was meant to be as stacked as it was, one way or the other. And it's dude, we literally had freaking arguably the great, one of the greatest heavyweight title fights on this card not happen, and it's still delivered. So
yeah, I mean, one of the better pay-per-views of the year, I'd say. And in the main event, Pereira gets that finish over Yuri in round 2. Left hook followed by some elbows and hammer fists. I thought that was just a crazy finish. And I guess let's start with the fight. So obviously we had talked a little bit before getting on the pod. Yuri's left leg right off the bat was just getting brutalized by Alex's leg kicks. I think it was probably the second or third time he hit him with that. He was already not a wrap, but his leg was definitely compromised after only a couple of them. And this is something that's really happened throughout Alex's UFC career. His leg kicks have proven to be a key part of his game. I mean, they messed up Israel Adesanya's legs, I think in both fights, if I'm thinking correctly. I might be merging them both in my head, but at the same time, though, his striking is so technical, his counter skills are so good, and I think in this fight versus Yuri, it really served him well because Yuri was coming forward most of the time, and it's not even Yuri wasn't landing. Yuri was doing well, pressuring him, especially up against the cage, but in the end, it's just Pereira's striking. He's a sniper. He waits for that mistake, and he gets you when you make it, and that's exactly what happened in this one, and his UFC run has just been so impressive. What did you think of this, man?
Yeah, I mean, just to piggyback off that, just I Yuri, you kind of just, I thought it was a sound, approach to, put the pressure on Pereira and try to back him up, and then, just from there, just work the short striking game and all that. But yeah, that one mistake was leaving the chin wide open, and obviously Alex Pereira is the last guy you want to do that with, and he capitalized, and that's that, man, pretty much. With Yuri, obviously from all the different the unorthodox kind of approach when it comes to his striking, that was something Pereira had to be wary of and be ready for, and it seemed like he was because these angles that Yuri Prochazka can strike from, they can put you down at any given second. But I think Pereira, he obviously sniffed out the mistake first. He capitalized, and we have once again a new light heavyweight champion.
Yeah, man, another chapter added.
A brand new, because if it was Yuri again, then then we just went from Yuri to Jamal Hill back to Yuri. So now, obviously I think we're going to have to see Jamal Hill versus Yuri Prochazka, but, now...
Or Alex Pereira. I mean, I think that Jamal probably deserves a title shot. I mean, like Yuri, he never lost the belt. And I think Dana said that if Adesanya comes up to 205, he wants him to fight a contender first. And he said he's not opposed to having that fight happen with Adesanya and Pereira, but he'd like to see Izzy at 205 kind of work his way back up, because obviously we remember when he fought Jan Blachowicz, he just looked undersized, and maybe he'd bulk up if he went up again. But I think as of now, Jamal Hill is probably the logical next choice for Pereira. And that's an interesting fight in itself. But to go back to Pereira a little bit, I think that it was interesting because in a way he proved things, but in another way he also just looked similar to how he has in his other fights, because I don't necessarily think that he showed anything different in terms of like his grappling. Like, I don't think we saw that he's gotten any better there, but
I think this just probably is just, more or less his natural weight class. I mean, obviously we're talking about him as a middleweight, and we're, pretty much the talk of the town is like how big he looks at middleweight. So now he's going up.
I mean, even at light heavyweight, he looks pretty big and filled out. And it's just, I think that that's the right weight class for him. And, I think even though like we didn't see more elements to his grappling, I think just in the first round when Yuri took him down and Alex was able to get back up, not right away, but relatively quickly, that matters.
He's very good at making like adjustments, like with the snap of a finger, Alex Pereira, and just like the fight really just comes to him, it feels like, and then his obviously his kickboxing kind of just does the rest. So.
Yeah, and when you're stuffing takedowns and being able to get up when you are taken down, I think that's a big deal, because we still don't know what it's going to look like if Alex gets stuck on the ground against a much better grappler, because we know Yuri's a good grappler, but not at the same level as some other guys who have been at 205. And I do think that there's something to be said for how well Alex handled himself on the ground and got back up and managed to. I think after that point when he did get up, that seemed like when the tide turned in his direction, because he was already hurting Yuri with the leg kicks, and Yuri's main hope, it seemed like, was to get him down and beat him up, or just like you were saying, to kind of like shorten that range so Alex can't pick him apart from the distance. So just an incredible performance. Like you said, the reads that he's making throughout the fight were phenomenal, and another chapter added in that crazy recent history of the UFC light heavyweight division. We made a video on that. If you haven't watched it yet, I'll put a card in the video at this moment. So click on that after this, and
another face gets added to that thumbnail.
Yeah, man, it's crazy that there can be any more than there have been just in the past like decade and even the past like few years. But either way, man, I'm happy to see a new champion. I think that like Alex brings new blood to that division. And even in the UFC, like his run so far has just been insane. I mean, he's had, I think, only 11 pro fights. This is only his, I want to say, I'm going to look it up to be sure, but I think this is only like his 7th UFC fight. And he's already a 2-division champion in the promotion.
Yeah,
and let me just add
that's a lot more than a lot of guys can,
can 7th
say.
Fight already has been champion in 2 weight classes. It's hard to get better than that. It's hard to get better than that. So, I don't really know what's next for Yuri. I think he's in a bit of a limbo spot in the division right now, but there's still a lot going on. Rakic is about to fight Jan Blachowicz in January. I wrote this down. I don't think this would ever happen, but just because of the history, Sean Strickland, I doubt that he ever goes up to 205. He fought at welterweight at one point. I saw like rumblings about this on social media, which is kind of why I wanted to address it. I just don't think that's ever going to happen. Not at 205 anyway. So I think Sean's probably staying at middleweight, but Ankalaev is still around. So there's still things going on at 205, and now there's a new champion, so we'll see what happens with him next. And at heavyweight now, you could argue that there's a new champion. I mean, it's an interim belt, but we were talking about this before. So Tom Aspinall is the interim UFC heavyweight champion, defeated Sergey Pavlovich in just over a minute. Perfect right hook. And like I said, now he's the interim champ. John Jones is what would they call that? The lineal champion or just the regular champion? So he's going to be fighting Stipe next. Dana's confirmed that, like, barring any crazy occurrence, that's the next fight for John Jones. So it looks like Tom Aspinall, unless he's going to be on the shelf for a while, because John Jones isn't going to be back. This is like the main thing. He tore his pec. That's like not an injury that you can easily recover from. So I would imagine that Tom Aspinall might be defending this interim title at some point. So before we get into the fight itself that just happened, what do we think of his place at heavyweight, and if he defends the title, what that means for his legacy?
It's, as far as his place goes, I think it's super, like, firm now. Like, this ain't just, prospect, nothing no more. Like, this guy is the real deal, clearly. Even coming now post-injury, and now, already holding a title. He's the real deal, and so with that, you kind of, when you put it like that, you think like, well, he's still holding an interim title, and he's not gonna fight the actual champion just yet. So, because obviously this being a heavyweight division, like, there's really no slouch to be found here, and so with Tom Aspinall now being back in this spot, with now obviously a bigger responsibility as interim champion, to me it's like, I think I don't even want to, like, say in the sense that, man, it's like, I just feel like if he defends this title and loses, I feel like that's more detrimental to, like, his spot and his legacy than, like, I guess, waiting it out, letting the dust settle and whatnot. But
well, you know what sucks too? The UFC, in a way, has really ruined what it means to be an interim champion because of some of the interim title fights they've put together. And, I was saying before this fight, in a way, this is almost a real title fight because John Jones is the champion, and I think he's definitely the best in the division. But the thing with this fight is, like, Tom Aspinall and Sergey Pavlovich, they're the top contenders. Like, they deserve title shots. So the fact that they're fighting for a UFC title, albeit an interim one, I value it higher than I value maybe like a Josh Emmett versus Yair Rodriguez, which is more of like a glorified number one contender fight. This felt like a fight where both guys deserve to have a belt wrapped around their waist. Who's going to win? And in this case, it was Tom Aspinall, and he's the interim champ. And I think that this shouldn't be held against him, but I agree with you when you say that if he loses in an interim title defense, that would hurt his legacy a little bit. Which is unfortunate because it's not even his fault. Like, in my opinion, I'm looking at Tom Aspinall as if he's a UFC champion right now. And that's not to say he's better than John Jones. It's just to say that he worked his way to the top and he's earned the belt that he won. So I think that he's the real deal, like you were saying. And even in this fight, man, like, he looked like typical Tom Aspinall, even off of that brutal injury that he had last year. So lightning quick. I mean, the power in his punches is still there, and it's just amazing. Like, his fight IQ, and we didn't really see his grappling in this fight, but we know he has exceptional grappling, and he has phenomenal footwork, and it just looked like Sergey was a step behind, and this fight didn't really take long. So.
You could see, I guess, with, really any Sergey Pavlovich fight too. He's the dude. He's coming to brawl, and like he was here. He's bringing it. Here he's pressuring Aspinall like heavily, and it seemed at first like we probably get out of the first round, but it would be an easy like 10-8 something like that for Sergey Pavlovich, and that just goes to show you just at heavyweight, especially like don't blink pretty much during a heavyweight fight because
that finish, it's so crazy.
That was truly just a thing, just mesmerize. And so obviously you see the performance like that too from Tom Aspinall. I think from the UFC's approach, they're gonna want to get him back in there as soon as possible.
I don't know if I agree with that, and it's not because they don't want to get him in there, but right now for him, it's like, who's his next opponent? Because John isn't the next guy. We already know that. It's not going to be Stipe. I think that what they're going to try and do is get Gane versus Almeida, who just won against Derek Lewis last week. I know we didn't do a pod, but that did happen. So Almeida versus Gane seems like that would make sense for like a number one contender fight, and then the winner of that maybe fights Aspinall for the interim title, which like it's just so unfortunate because both of those guys are killers. So like if they beat Aspinall, what does any of this mean? And like I said, I think it means a lot. And I think you would agree with that. But, you know, like I said, the UFC has kind of ruined the meaning of an interim title. And you hope that that doesn't impact whatever future that we see from Tom Aspinall. But one way or another, he got UFC gold wrapped around his waist. And I think he earned his spot in that fight. And I think he deserves
It really
the title.
is difficult because I think after the John Jones and Stipe fight, the talk isn't going to really even be about who's the champion. It's going to be about, okay, well, this is the greatest heavyweight of all time now.
Yeah.
So, like...
Because Jones and Stipe is a legacy fight, which is fair. Like, we were talking about this, because Stipe may not be the number one contender in merit currently, but this dude's career, I mean, right now he is currently the best UFC heavyweight we've ever seen, so... I'm not opposed to a guy like that getting a title shot, even over the real top contenders. But, yeah, I mean, I didn't mean to cut you off.
To me, what it feels like is, like, really a closing of, like, you know, the prior era of heavyweight MMA. And now we're welcoming in this new one officially in full force with Aspinall at the top of his game, Cyril Gane at the top of his game, Jailton Almeida on the come up. And then, obviously... everyone, you know, even Ankalaev as well, who's, you know...
Ankalaev 205.
That's right, yeah.
Heavyweight, though, there's still, like, an abundance of content. I mean, Curtis Blades is still around. Derek Lewis is the type of guy you can never really count out. Volkov's still hanging around there. And Sergey Spivak is still top 10, Tai Tuivasa. And, like, you were kind of saying this before. At heavyweight, really anything can happen because of how big they are. And you never know who's going to knock out who. And there may be people at the lower end of the top 10 who within a couple fights might be title contenders. So, I mean, look at Tai Tuivasa, for example. I mean, he's ranked number 9 right now. A couple fights ago, this dude, we were talking about him maybe getting a title shot with another win. So, anything can happen. I think that that's fair. I don't know if, like, I agree with what you're saying in the sense that it seems like it's a changing of the guard, but... we really don't know what John Jones is going to do. I mean, he might retire. He might not after the Stipe fight. And I think if he doesn't, maybe he will fight Aspinall or whoever the next contender interim champion might be. So I think heavyweight is going to be entering an interesting era in the next few years. And I'm really curious to see who is the real UFC heavyweight champion come like 2025.
Yeah, I'm excited for it, but, you know, it's just like, well... we still have to do this John Jones and Stipe fight first. So
yeah, I think everything
it's kind of it's hard to
goes off that.
Pretty much. But awesome fight, great win for Tom Aspinall.
Yeah, man.
And
another great win on this card was by Jessica Andrade against Mackenzie Dern. And I think we talked about this when we did the pay-per-view previews for the end of the year. But I didn't love this matchup for Mackenzie Dern coming in because of the striking. And I saw a lot of Jessica Andrade slander before this fight, saying that she's washed, not factoring in that she lost to Erin Blanchfield, Yan Xiaonan, and Tatiana Suarez, all of whom are top contenders in their divisions. And I think the other thing, too, is that Jessica has been going up and down, which has made people think that maybe she... might not do well, because that's definitely not too healthy to keep fluctuating like that. But, you know, at 115, she fought Mackenzie Dern, TKOs her in round 2, and I don't know about you, man, but I saw this coming. Like I said, Dern has had sloppy boxing throughout her UFC run. It's gotten better over the past few years, but her jiu-jitsu has kind of bailed her out in a few fights, and in this one it just wasn't the case. And Andrade swings with bombs, and we know that. And for the female divisions, the type of knockouts that Jessica Andrade delivers are not common. And this fight was another example of that. I mean, in round 2, I almost thought that this could have been like a late stoppage, because Mackenzie was just getting beat up on the feet. And I know she wasn't down and out, but midway through the second round, it just seemed like she didn't have a chance. And a couple minutes later is when that finish came, and it wasn't even like she got stopped like on the ground. Like she was really knocked out on the feet, and she just fell, which you really don't see much in female MMA. And yeah, man, I know I was going on a little bit about that fight, but I don't know. I just feel like a lot of people didn't agree with me on that one, and I don't know why. Because Mackenzie Dern, like, I don't see the major improvements that these people are talking about on the feet. She's gotten better, but not to the same level as a Jessica Andrade, for example. But I don't know. What did you think of this fight coming in, and then like the result of it off that?
Pretty much. I think you could tell from just Jessica Andrade's, composure in there and whatnot. Like nothing like seemed to get to her whatsoever. And so what that kind of said to me is like, okay, well, she's obviously ready for the jiu-jitsu, so if Mackenzie Dern is going to put on display this improved striking of her, and, you have Jessica Andrade here who's going to stand with you, that's how it's going to be. And so pretty much, and then as far as like the weight class goes too, I think this is probably now, this is her natural weight class as well. And so she just seemed very just, even keel and just like, she knew I think she knew what she wanted, where, what spots to attack, when to attack them. Pretty much, I guess, like, let Mackenzie Dern just, like, exert as much energy as there is. Obviously, like, don't get caught by something, get knocked down, and then have things change that way.
Mackenzie has power, too. Like, I said she was sloppy, but that doesn't mean she's bad by any stretch. There's plenty of sloppy boxers who've done well in the UFC. It's just, like, for Mackenzie Dern, she has this luxury of being like such a legendary jiu-jitsu practitioner that she knows that her opponent doesn't want to go to the ground. So in my mind, like, I feel like you should be, I'm not trying to tell her how to train, obviously, but like, you would think that her boxing would have gotten a lot better than it has, because you know that you're going to have to take this fight to the ground. No one is ever going to try and take her down. Maybe besides like a Tatiana Suarez. But besides her, this fight's going to be on the feet. And when you have a striker who's as powerful as Andrade and throws with just such heavy intensity, I don't know, man. Like, I just didn't love this matchup from the beginning. And I wasn't really letting that narrative that Andrade might not be where she once was get to me. Because, like I said, the three people that she had lost to are all top contenders. Like, to say that means she's washed, that's crazy. I just don't agree with that. And I agree with you though it's how staying at 115 might be the move for her. I hope that she doesn't keep going up and down, because I do agree 115 just seems like where she's comfortable. But nonetheless, it was a phenomenal win, and it was just another phenomenal fight on this card. And the card started off, dude, with these two insane knockouts. With first we'll talk about like Benoit Saint-Denis versus Matt Frevola. That came out of nowhere. That, like, a picture perfect lead leg roundhouse to the head, 91 seconds. Doesn't get much better than that. And then before that, Diego Lopes obviously had that beautiful knockout over Pat Sabatini. That was a fight I thought was going to be like a crazy back and forth war, and then Diego Lopes just steamrolled him, and not even with the jiu-jitsu, just a bunch of punches. So I thought that was pretty crazy. But my question to you is, which of the two knockouts did you enjoy seeing more?
Damn, that's a good question, honestly.
I mean, they both got my juices flowing. Like, I was excited for this card, and then those two knockouts right off the bat got me really amped.
Yeah, I think, honestly, in terms of, like, trajectory and where both winners are going, I'd say probably Lopes, I think, is the more, eye-grabbing in terms of, like, well, all right, like, I'm not 100% up to what the odds were coming into this fight, but I would think Sabatini, if nothing else, is a slight favorite. And so
they probably were close for this one. I'm gonna see if I can find them while you're talking.
And so with that as well, but both guys, up and coming as they are, Lopes as well. Already coming off the the Mozart Evloev fight as well. Like I think with this guy, honestly, there is it's not perfect. Obviously, even in this fight, you could see it's still rough around the edges, but I think this guy's got a pretty good like trajectory going for him, especially after this. I mean, I think that was definitely the way to like really get your name out there, of course.
Yeah,
And
for
so
sure.
I think yeah, maybe like in terms of who he fights next,
I have a
in terms
name.
of a style and all of that.
You tell me if you agree with this or not. Dan Ige, ranked
Oh,
contender. It's interesting because the jiu-jitsu, you gotta edge Lopez, but on the feet, Dan Ige is a savage, man, and he's good all around. Like he's not the easiest guy to get to the ground, so and he's ranked. That's the big thing for me. I think he deserves a ranked opponent. I mean, Lopez got in the UFC on a short notice fight versus Evloev, who was obviously ranked at the time, and nobody thought that Lopez was going to do what he did against him. And since then, he's just been electrifying. I've loved watching him fight every time I see his name on the bill. And this fight was no different. I mean, this one I thought was going to be some back and forth war, and he comes out there and starches Pat Sabatini. I think you got to give that dude a ranked opponent. Like he just deserves it. And Dan Ige is my pick. You can tell me what you think of that, or if you have another name.
that's pretty fair, dude. I mean, in terms of um Dan Ige, like I think it's honestly that might be like a difficult fight for him to take, honestly. But if
I mean, it's
uh,
moving up, and he
yeah,
deserves to because you can't keep giving him guys that are on the bubble, I guess, of being on the rankings if he's just running through them. And he did that with Pat Sabatini, who was no
yeah,
slouch. Like,
I think being in there with a guy like with Dan Ige, in terms on Lopez's part, I think you would definitely like see things in a way like the weaknesses probably get shown a little more, but in terms of the strengths and whatever he improves on in the training camp, like coming into that fight, like you probably get a little bit of that too. And then obviously you can't 100% predict the finish, but assuming like that would be a full 3 round fight between the two, I
yeah,
think it would be pretty back and forth.
yeah. I mean, I don't know how that one would end. That I definitely would say if I had to bet, I would bet it to not go the distance. But it could. I could see it going back and forth. I see like a back and forth fight that ends in like the second or
I don't know.
third.
I
Just because
think
these guys
with
are so
me,
crazy.
I don't know. I don't know if Ige like even throws all that caution to the wind. I guess it depends. Like if you really think Dan Ige going into that fight is he's the clear favorite here. Like he should win. He has to win. I think that's fair, but man, I don't know. I thought, yeah, this was just a really encouraging performance. I think from Diego Lopez. Like he got him out of there quick. So
Yeah.
it's,
And like another one where he's just been showcasing all of his skills. I mean, this dude is so exciting. I think you could put him in the co-main of a fight night or on any main
that's
card
really all you
pay-per-view.
can ask for at the end of the day. Just
Yeah.
like that exciting. Just both guys are just out there giving it all. But
And we know that's what
um,
the UFC wants. But
yeah.
in general, like, I enjoy this guy. He's one of the most exciting
Yeah,
young
I don't know.
prospects.
I guess what I was thinking is I think Ige probably would probably look to just make him work like what you did to Sabatini. Like you're not gonna get me out of there. You might knock me down one time or two, but
Yeah.
you know
Dan's
to
tough as nails, too.
exactly to actually finish Dan Ige, like that's a tall task. So
For sure, for sure. But this was a really fun card in general. I mean, even the prelims were pretty good. A shout out to Jared Gordon. We don't have to go too far into his fight, but I was happy to see him get a win.
yeah.
Inspiring story. He talked about having like the drug addiction and doing heroin in Penn Station, which is like obviously like around MSG, and then now he's winning fights at the Garden. Like, can't talk about a better glow up than that guy. So that's pretty incredible for him. So shout out to Jared Gordon for inspiring everyone with that one. And before we go though, next week we have Brendan Allen versus Paul Craig at the Apex. Another Apex card, but I do want to say, for true fans out there, this one is definitely a sleeper. I mean, in the co-main, 15-0, Michael Morales versus Jake Matthews, Chase Hooper versus Jordan Levitt, and there's a lot of other fun fights on the undercard, and I think this one's going to be really fun. So next week we'll be back to cover it and anything else that may happen in the MMA world. We'll see if Chael and Ariel's beef takes any more hits, but I don't know. Before we go, actually, what did you think of that? That was interesting to me.
Yeah, man. I mean, like,
out of nowhere.
Yeah, like, the two are obviously the two are buddies and all of that. I guess it wasn't ideal that they weren't in the studio to like have this conversation, but it did feel like rather like awkward and whatnot. It's like I understand, like, because if you do obviously pay attention, like, you understand the banter between the two and whatnot. Yeah. And Chael, obviously, when Chael Sonnen's on camera, like, man, he's there's really no filter on him. And
I think they were both right in certain ways. Like, I think Ariel was right, as in it was a win for Francis because now his stock goes way up. But I also agree with Chael in the sense that, like, before the pay-per-view, this wasn't as hyped up of a product. But now afterwards, while giving Francis the credit, it wasn't the event business-wise that it was. Like, it never really was going to be a crazy event business-wise. These guys went into it knowing that they were going to lose money. They just wanted the spectacle, and they got it. The event itself was entertaining, obviously, and I enjoyed it.
I think what you can really appreciate is, like, I guess this is as close to, like, in terms of the greatest heavyweight just combat sports fight you can get, like, right now at this time, like, Tyson Fury, Francis Ngannou is that, and then obviously you take it to MMA, and it's Jon Jones and Stipe Miocic. Now, obviously, the actual ideal scenario, I believe, would have been Jon Jones and Francis Ngannou going against each other.
Hey, man, but Dana White said that's the stupidest idea ever because Francis doesn't fight for the promotion. Did you see that clip, by the way? Oh, my God.
Respect to that reporter for asking the question, too, at least.
If you're out there, that was not a stupid question. That was a brilliant question, and your points were great.
Much appreciated.
Yeah, man, it's about time someone's asking the real question. And when Dana gets that mad, it's because it's a good question. Like, it's not because it was a dumb one. So either way, man, like, MMA has just been crazy lately. I mean, we got Sean Strickland beefing with Valentina Shevchenko on Twitter. Like, what is happening lately in the MMA world? It's been too much. It's not worth breaking down point by point, but it's worth bringing up. It's definitely interesting. So all is well in the MMA world, despite the craziness that's going on lately. And we'll see what happens in the next week, and we'll see if anything else comes up for us to talk about. Until then, we'll see y'all.
That you'll be doing when you go hard.